You can name every app on your phone. You know your Wi-Fi password. You remember your best friend's birthday because Facebook told you this morning. But ask yourself this: can you navigate home without GPS? Can you identify which plants in your neighborhood are edible? Can you read the weather by looking at clouds? Your ancestor could do all of that before breakfast, and they never went to school a single day in their life. So here's the uncomfortable question. Are you actually smarter than the person who lived 50,000 years ago? Or did something happen along the way that made you believe you were? Let's start with what smart actually means. We've been measuring intelligence wrong. IQ tests, reading levels, math scores. These measure your ability to operate inside a system that was built 200 years ago. They don't measure memory. They don't measure spatial reasoning in the preschool, real world. They don't measure pattern recognition under pressure. And those are exactly the things ancient humans were doing at an elite level every single day, just to stay alive. In 2008, researchers at the University of New South Wales studied Aboriginal Australians navigating the Australian outback. No maps, no compass, no GPS. These individuals could travel hundreds of kilometers through featureless desert terrain and arrive precisely at their destination. When scientists tested their spatial memory against Western university students, it wasn't close. The Aboriginal navigators weren't just better. They were operating in a completely different cognitive category. Here's why. Aboriginal Australians use something called song lines. Every stretch of land has a song associated with it. The melody changes as the terrain changes. A rising note means the ground rises. A shift in rhythm means a river is nearby. The entire landscape is encoded into music stored in memory. No map needed. The map is inside you. And this system has been passed down and refined for over 60,000 years. That's 3 times longer than writing has precepts existed. But memory like this doesn't happen by accident. It's built. And here's what built it. For 300,000 years, human survival depended entirely on what you could hold in your head. There was no writing, there was no recording, there was no Google. If you forgot where the Google water source was during a drought, you died. If you forgot which berries were poisonous, you died. If you forgot the migration patterns of the animals you hunted, your entire group starved. Memory wasn't a skill. It was a biological weapon, and the human brain responded accordingly. The hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for spatial and episodic memory, is significantly more active in people who don't rely on external memory systems. A famous 2011 study tracked London taxi drivers who had memorized the entire street layout of London, over 25,000 streets, before GPS made that obsolete. Their hippocampus was measurably larger than average, not smarter by IQ, but neurologically rebuilt by memory demand. Now imagine that level of demand applied to every person every day for their entire life. Ancient humans weren't just remembering directions, they were memorizing the behavioral patterns of dozens of animal species. They tracked subtle changes in wind direction, animal droppings, broken vegetation, the way certain insects behave before rain. The Kalahari Bushmen of southern Africa can identify an individual animal by its tracks from days ago, predict where it will be hours from now. Scientists who have studied this describe it as a form of intelligence that has no equivalent in modern cognitive testing. Because we never built a test we built tests for the things we value. And somewhere along the way, we stopped valuing memory. That shift has a name. It's called the Socratic paradox, and it started with writing. Around 3000 BC, writing emerged in Mesopotamia, and almost immediately, philosophers started worrying about what it would do to the human mind. Plato recorded a dialogue in which the Egyptian god Thoth presents writing to the king as a gift for human memory. The king rejects it. He says, "This will create forgetfulness in the learner's souls, because they will not use their memories. They will trust the external written characters and not remember of themselves." Plato wrote this down, which is ironic. But the concern was real, and he was right. In 1985, Psychologist Merlin Donald published a theory of cognitive evolution arguing that the invention of external memory systems, first drawing, then writing, then print, then digital, didn't just change how we stored information. It changed how we processed it. When memory lives outside your head, your brain stops building the internal architecture to hold it. You don't lose intelligence. You redirect it. But the redirect comes at a cost. Studies on oral cultures, societies that still transmit all knowledge through spoken word and memory, consistently show memory capacities that seem impossible to modern people. The Iliad and the Odyssey, two of the longest poems in Western literature, were originally composed and performed entirely from memory. Every bard who performed them had memorized tens of thousands of lines in exact sequence, not approximately, exactly, word for word, night after night, for generations before anyone wrote them down. The technique they used is called the method of loci. You assign each piece of information to a physical location inside an imagined space, a palace, a familiar street, a path. You've walked a path 1,000 times. To recall information, you walk through the space in your mind and pick it up. Ancient Greek and Roman orators used this routinely. They could deliver hours-long speeches from memory without a single note. Today, it's considered a party trick. But here's what's actually happening when you use that technique. You're recruiting the same spatial memory systems your ancestors used to navigate landscapes. The brain doesn't distinguish between real space and imagined space at the neurological level. Memory and navigation run on the same hardware, and that hardware was built for a world where forgetting meant dying. So what changed? Two things. Writing externalized memory, and specialization made most knowledge irrelevant to most people. In a hunter-gatherer group of 30 people, every adult needed to know everything. Plant identification, weather reading, animal behavior, navigation, medicine, tool construction, fire making, childbirth, conflict resolution. One person couldn't opt out of knowing something because the group couldn't afford that gap. Knowledge was total and shared. In a city of 1 million people, you need to know your job. That's it. Someone else handles the water. Someone else grows the food. Someone else knows medicine. Specialization made civilization possible, and it quietly made each individual less capable than any human who came before them. This isn't nostalgia. This is neuroscience. The brain is plastic. It builds what it uses, and it dismantles what it doesn't. Every time you open Google Maps, instead of remembering a route, your hippocampus gets a little quieter. Every time you set a phone reminder, instead of holding a date in your head, the retrieval pathways get a little weaker. You're not getting dumber. You're outsourcing cognition to machines, and the machines are getting stronger while the original hardware slowly goes dark. There's a word for this: cognitive offloading. And researchers at the University of Toronto found that people who frequently offload memory to external devices score lower on tests of unaided recall, independent problem solving, and working memory capacity. Not because they're less intelligent, because they've trained themselves not to need those systems. And unused systems atrophy. Your ancestor woke up every morning carrying the entire map of their world inside their head. Every plant, every animal, every water source, every danger, every story, every face, every lesson from every person who came before them. It was all in there. No backup, no search bar, just a brain that had been under relentless pressure to hold everything that mattered, because everything that mattered depended on it. You have access to more information than any human in history. It sits in your pocket, and you can't remember your mother's phone number without looking it up. That's not progress. That's a trade. And like every trade humans have ever made, we didn't fully understand what we were giving up until it was already gone.